Building retuning training was conducted by Ron Underhill and Gupong Liu, scientists at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Classroom and on-site training for Maryland State Agency facility managers was conducted at Towson University in Towson, Maryland on June 17th through the 19th, 2014. This segment of training covers air handler heating and cooling.
We're going to talk about air handler heating and cooling. So obviously, if we're talking about air handlers, heating and cooling coils, we want to make sure the coils are clean, the filters are clean. We know that's true, right? We do good maintenance. We want to make sure the valves aren't leaking through. If we can touch. If it's steam coil, we probably wouldn't want to touch a coil. Do we have an infrared gun, or better yet, an infrared camera? Do we see any evidence that they're leaking by? Do we have sensors between coils that would indicate that? Do we have lockouts on our heating or cooling loops? Why do we want lockouts? Well, most control vendors provide you with that. And what we generally see is, if I get above 50 degrees outside, I'm probably going to be in a cooling mode, so I don't need heat. I can lock it out. And if I get below 55, and those numbers can shift, but I can lock out my cooling and just use economizer, meaning outside air. Typically what we see is those lockouts get moved. They get counter moved, because if I got a leaking heating coil and I've got my cooling locked out, well, golly, guess what? I need to reactivate that cooling coil to remove that waste heat from my leaking heating coil, and also vice versa. If I've got a leaking cooling coil and I've locked out my heating coil and my cooling command says I'm at 0%, I'm closed, but with my heating locked out, I'm discharging 45, 49 degrees. I don't have money, I don't have it in my budget to fix the coil, but I can reactivate my heating coil. Simultaneous heating and cooling. So those are some of the things we would say, you know what, really need to keep an eye on that. Critical on dual duct, multi-zone systems. And again, someone says, well, where can I lock out the heating? Where can I lock out my cooling? Based on the balance point. Balance point meaning based on the building's envelope, mass. At what point, based on outside air, do I no longer need to add mechanical cooling to my building? Or can I get away without using mechanical cooling or mechanical heat? Now, again, the caveat to that is I'm in the east, south. I got high humidity, and I need to have some ability to reheat because I'm overcooling with this cooling coil, because now I'm dehumidifying. And the number one question I ask everybody is, okay, you're dehumidifying, what's your target? And what do you mean? Well, what's your humidity levels you're trying to maintain in the building? Well, I don't have humidity sensors. Well, okay, so how are you doing this? Brute force. I'm just pushing that accelerator to the floor, and then I'm trimming with the brake. And we talk about that. We didn't talk about that earlier, but we laugh about that if we operated our cars that way, but that's how we operate our air handling systems. We just brute force, push the cooling coil all the way to the floor, and we trim with the reheat. And we'd say that's kind of not a good way to operate your car. It may not be a good way to operate your buildings, especially if I don't have anything that tells me how well am I dehumidifying. Not only that, when I dehumidify, we know we have a cooling coil, moisture condenses, it drips down into a condensate pan, and it goes out through a P-trap to the floor drain, and we check those all the time, right? Right? No. So we're pushing that cooling coil to the floor, we're trimming with the reheat. We don't know how much that moisture actually got out of the airstream, how much of it got re-entrained back into the airstream, but we feel good because we're accomplishing something and we're spending a lot of energy to do it. So real important, if you're living this climate zone and you're doing dehumidification every season, before you get into your dehumidification mode, you just came into it, your guys went around, they checked the drain pans, they checked the P-traps, nothing's plugged, they're good to go. And you're probably going to check them again through the middle of the season, right? One of the things you said, get up out of the seat and go check stuff. So that's a good thing to be looking at, because we're spending a lot of energy to do this. And then that's a different heating and cooling. What we're talking about on this screen is really an unanticipated heating and cooling because we got a coil that leaks. I'm not going to read all this, but basically it says if they're off and my trended data shows that my discharge temperature sharply drops, right coincidentally when I start up my chiller, and my cooling valve says it's closed, well then I probably got a leaking valve. The same would be true for my heating system. That's assuming that I actually shut off my chill water plant or my hot water plant. If they're always running all the time, they may be masking each other, and I may not even know that I got a leaking valves. And I will guarantee you, everyone has leaking valves. Everyone. Now, if you claim to have a building without leaking valves, I want to see it, because I've never found one yet. But so again, it's good, and there's a lot of reasons why valves leak. We may talk about some of those reasons a little bit later on. So if I have the ability to lock out at the air handler, the heating coil, or the cooling coil, we would really recommend using that. And if I do and I find out, golly, I got a leaking valve, then that needs to be noted, and it should go into your maintenance program, or preventive maintenance, execution maintenance, unplanned maintenance, whatever. You've identified an opportunity by using your lockouts. You may have to push them back so that you can simultaneously heat and cool until that valve gets fixed. But at least use those lockouts as a way to find out that you've got some leakers, and then go fix them. So again, we've already talked about that. Heating and cooling coils possibly overlapping on the second bullet. When we see that, it generally means we've got leaking valves. Unreasonable values, again, leaking valves. I've got to continue to mechanically heat or mechanically cool because I got the other coil. In one case, we were at a school, elementary school, both systems, the heating coil and the cooling coil were leaking. They can never shut off one or the other, elementary school. Huge energy costs. And this shows it right here. This is a place that Gupong was at, and you can see the trended data. And this is not leaking valve. This is in the control code where it's purposely activating. The blue line is the chill water coil. The red line is the hot water heating coil. This is not reheat. This is right in the air handler. And they didn't even know that that was going on in their control system until they used eCam, grabbed the data, put it into the chart like this, and they're going, what? And then they actually went out in the field, walked it down, and validated, yeah, they had to go fix their control code. Again, the same thing. And you can see based on the yellow-orange line, that's the outside air temperature, which is on that axis over there. It was occurring between about 50 to 70 degrees almost. Same thing.